Yo guys, what is going on? It is your boy, One Star Week Finna. We are back for another video today, and it's gonna be our first FIFA 21 video, so I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about bringing you guys content on a more regular basis since FIFA 21 is about to drop. So today, our video is gonna be about cheap beasts you gotta look out for. I'm gonna make this into a little series. I'm gonna include all of the top 5 leagues, and of course, you already know the first league has to be the Premier League. As an English-speaking soccer fan from America, I think it's the most accessible league to me. It's the most accessible league to a lot of people. So, of course, when they go home, when they fire up FIFA, they wanna bring in these Premier League players. So I'm gonna help you guys find some cheap beasts to look out for in the Premier League. A lot of the time when the game first starts out, it can be overwhelming. It can be hard to see who the cheap beasts are, who the cheap beasts aren't, so I'm here to help with that. So, without further ado, we're gonna start off with some cheap beast attackers, and you gotta keep in mind that a lot of these stats that I'm gonna be using, that you're gonna see to the left of me or to the right of me, I haven't really decided, but a lot of the stats you're gonna see on this video don't reflect the true stats of FIFA 21. They're just predictions. I mean, most likely the stats themselves won't be far off, but yeah, I'm gonna get into it. So for the first attacker, we're gonna be talking about Mason Greenwood. He had a great season last year, and if you've ever used any Greenwood card in FIFA 20, you already know what he brings to the table. He brings that physicality, that decent size, the 5-star weak foot most importantly, and his stats have been leaked for FIFA 21, so I'm going off concrete information here. He is a right mid, which is not the best thing, but I do think because he's a right mid with 81 pace, his stats and everything like that aren't that bad aside from the pace. The pace should make him into one of those cheap beasts, and the fact that he does have the 5-star weak foot means that he'll be very suited for the striker or the cam positions early game, and I do think you should keep a lookout for him. The next player we're going to talk about is going to be our first Everton mention of the day. It's going to be none other than Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And he's pretty much went from a meme to somebody that a lot of our fan base are really excited about. And it's because he had 13 league goals last year. He had a great year all around. And even though his form wasn't really that great after restart, as you guys have seen this year, he's a player of the month candidate. He has 4 goals in 2 games. So you might want to bring him in to your FIFA 21 starter squad. I do think he's going to get some decent upgrades, and he's going to be almost like a poor man's Lukaku. He's going to have the pace, the physical. He might not quite have the finishing ability, which is fair because he didn't really score that many goals last year, but I do think he's going to be somebody who's going to have somewhere around 85 pace, 80 physical, maybe around 75 to 80 finishing, and he might be somebody that could really help you grind rivals or maybe help you in your first weekend league game. You never know. We're going to move it on from blue shite to red shite, and we're going to be talking about Minamino. I don't want to butcher this guy's name. He's another one whose stats have already been leaked, and I do anticipate he's going to be a cheap beast. He has the pace at 89, and even though 89 pace, when you think about FIFA 20, doesn't sound like a lot. In FIFA 21, they've nerfed a lot of people's paces, so 89 pace is actually a very, very good thing to have on the wing. He's a right winger. He has 70s in passing, or not passing, or he has 70s in shooting and passing, and despite that, I do think he's going to be very, very nice. He does have some nice dribbling, and he is somebody all around who you want to bring up and down the pitch, bringing the ball up and down the pitch, which is really going to be what the true role of a lot of these cheap wingers are going to be. So if you need somebody like that, I'd say look no further. The next cheap beast we're going to talk about here is going to be somebody who has saved West Ham from relegation potentially last year, Mikel Antonio, and he's a go-to of mine every year, early game in FIFA. He always is somebody very similar to Calvert-Lewin who has the pace, who has the physical, who has some decent finishing ability, and is somebody who could really play multiple positions due to his pace. He can play on the wing. He can play as a midfielder because he does have some good defense. So if you're looking for a utility player, if you're looking for somebody who can dominate these early game defenses, I think Antonio is going to be a good player. We're going to stay on the topic of relegation form strikers or relegation team strikers. And we're going to be talking about Ollie Watkins. He had a great year in the championship last year. He's now playing for Villa. And I do anticipate him to have a very, very nice card. I anticipate him to maybe have around 85 pace, 75 shooting. And what he will bring to the table in comparison to cheap strikers I've mentioned like Calvert-Lewin and Antonio is I do think he'll be better on the ball than them. He will be able to create his own shot more often than them. And if that's the profile of striker you think fits your game, I think Watkins is somebody to look out for. The final two players we're going to talk about here are going to be Ryan Fraser and ALMIRON. And Fraser is somebody that I do look towards at the beginning of every FIFA cycle because he does tend to have an overpowered card. He's very, very short, so I think a lot of people steer away from him when it comes to the mid-game squads, if you want to call it that, or whenever people start getting coins, they don't really go for Fraser. His links aren't the best. He's Scottish, but he is still Premier League. He still has that strong link to Andy Robertson. And I do think even with a potential downgrade this year, he's going to have around 85 pace, probably mid-70s in shooting and passing. And the most important thing I think he will bring to a lot of people is that dribbling. He's going to feel very smooth on the ball. Unfortunately, he's likely to have 3-star skills, which is going to be a downgrade for a lot of people's potential and start the game squads, but I do think he's definitely worth the shout, as well as ALMIRON. I think ALMIRON is going to have a better year this year than he did last year. He's definitely going to have the pace. I think his card is linked as well, and it's going to be somebody who has 89 pace, low 70s in shooting and passing, very decent dribbling. What he does lack, though, is the weak foot. He has a 2-star weak foot, so that's something to keep in mind if you want to bring him in. The next cards we're going to talk about here are going to be our midfielders from the Premier League to look for. And I think the first one I want to talk about here is Soucek from West Ham. He's somebody who came in the January transfer window, and he does have an overpowered card when you look at his stats or his projected stats. A lot of people slept on it because when he came in the January transfer window, pretty much cards like Soucek were already phased out. But in September, in October, I think these Soucek cards are going to be very, very nice. He does look to have mid-70s in pace, high physical, decent defense. And if you're looking for somebody who could sweep up in front of the front four, I think Soucek is going to be one of the top cheap beasts of that profile. Speaking of which, another one who does fit that profile is going to be Sander Berge. I think he's somebody who is going to have high 70s in pace, is going to have high stats in defending and physical. And once again, if you need a CDM that's going to clean up, almost like a Sissoko, I think that Sander Berge is going to be worth a shout. Next, we're going to look a little bit further up the pitch. We're no longer talking about CDMs. We're talking about one of the most important positions. I'm sorry, I'm tripping on my words. Most important positions in modern football is going to be the CM position. And the first one I want to talk about here is going to be the Spurs man, Lo Celso. He's gotten a downgrade since last year, I think because of lack of playing time. But because of this downgrade, he might be a bargain. He's an 82 rated, and he does a lot of the small things you want in the midfield. He has the pace. Of course, he has the passing, the dribbling, the physical. He could put in the defensive shift, and I do think if you need a CM, maybe even an attacking CDM, I think Lo Celso is going to be one of the ones you really want to take into the weekend league. Another one in that profile is going to be OXLADE-CHAMBERLAI, another red shite. But I do have to say he does look very, very overpowered for what he's going to bring. He has the pace, he has the dribbling. And if you need a CM that's going to bring the ball up and down the pitch, somebody who's press resistant, somebody who could create his own shot, maybe even overlap and score his own shot, I think OXLADE-CHAMBERLAI is going to be one you look to bring in. Another one, of course, is another red shite. It's going to be Naby Keita. I do anticipate he's going to get a bit more playing time this year, especially if there is a departure of Gigi Wijnaldum. And I think he brings in a lot of things to your side. Number one, his pace is probably going to be around 70, so he's not going to be a speed demon. He's going to be somebody with very high dribbling stats. I do expect his dribbling to be around 86, 87, 88. And I do think he's going to be somebody who could help make your midfield press resistant, help bring the ball along, help maybe make some incisive passes over the top of the defense. And I do think he's going to be a great buy for somebody out there. Finally, we are going to talk about another Spurs midfielder. It's going to be Jetson Fernandez, another January transfer window signing, another card that a lot of people slept on because when he came, the power creep had already passed him. But look at last year's stats. He has 70s in every spot. And the most important thing I'm going to look at here is his pace. Even if they downgrade his pace, I do expect him to have around 76 pace. He does have decent physical stats. And he's somebody who's going to be a box-to-box. Somebody who could pass, defend. Somebody who could carry the ball up the field. Somebody who could track back and help the defense. And of course, somebody who could finish around the box. So I do think he's going to be a great buy for somebody out there. Next, we're going to talk about our defenders, and of course, the first one's going to be our second Everton player of the day, Mason Holgate. A lot of people have slept on him amidst Everton's really bad season last year, but he did have a great year. What he's going to bring, I think, to the table in comparison to a lot of the other cheap options on this game is going to be the pace. I expect him to have 73 to 74 pace. Very good dribbling stats for a center back. And I do think he's going to have respectable defense and physical. So if you're looking for somebody that feels like John Stones, but you don't have John Stones money, I think Holgate's going to be your guy. Next, we'll talk about another center back here, and he does have league stats, so we do know what to expect with him. It's going to be Soyuncu. And the league stat that stood out for a lot of people here is his lack of pace. 69 pace. And for a lot of people early game in FIFA especially, the cutoff is 70. Don't be one of these people. I mean, I don't think you're going to notice the difference between 69 and 70 pace. And when you look at the rest of his card, it's very, very nice for a defender. I do think he's going to feel overpowered going into a challenge. I mean, if you've ever used Soyuncu this year, you already know that that's the case. And I do think if you do sleep on him because of his lack of pace, you might be somebody who's really sleeping on somebody who could help your team. Next, we'll talk about the fullbacks. Well, actually, no, I got one more center back for you guys. It's going to be somebody named Tony Rudiger, somebody who might be an outcast in the current Chelsea side, but his stats have leaked actually, and he has a very decent card. He has 70s in pace. His defense and physical are in the low 80s, and he's somebody who might be able to be the guy that is your rock and defense at the beginning of the game. 80s in defense and physical are very rare for these cheap cards, especially in the Premier League, so he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Next, we'll talk about the fullbacks, and I think the fullback a lot of people go for at the beginning of the game in the Premier League is Musaku from West Ham. I do think he's going to have another nice card this year again, and what he does bring to the table is the attacking prowess, the 4-star skills, the nice dribbling ability, and of course the pace. Even with a pace nerf, I do expect him to have 84s in pace, which is going to probably be good enough early game. Speaking of pace, and speaking of West Ham fullbacks, the guy on the other side, Fredericks, his card's been leaked, and once again, I do think his pace, his overall stats are very, very nice. But of course, it's going to be his pace that we go back to. He has 90s in pace. His defense and physical may be a bit mediocre. His end product going down the wing may be a bit mediocre. But if you've ever used anybody early game, you already know for the fullback position, pace trumps everything. You can have somebody with amazing stats, but 75 pace, and they wouldn't feel as good at the fullback position as somebody with just that pure 90+ pace and decent stats all around. I believe that that's what that Fredericks card is going to be. Finally, we are going to be talking about the right back I used early game last year. It's going to be Maitland-Niles. I got him untradeable last year. I gave him a spin, and I was pleasantly surprised. He was somebody who was a jack of all trades, which you may want in the right back position. Most importantly, though, he did have the decent pace, the decent physical. He felt decent going into a challenge, and I do expect him to feel a little bit better this year, being that he is due for a probable upgrade this year. So if you're looking for a cheap English fullback, yo, Maitland-Niles might be the one. The final section of this video is going to be talking about goalkeepers, and I'll keep this one short and sweet because we can't really talk about goalkeepers too long. I think the cheap ones you should be looking for in the Premier League are going to be Nick Pope, the 6'7" beast, and Areola. Areola transferred to Fulham. We don't know why. We're still trying to figure out why, but every year he does tend to have an overpowered card. He has the French links. And Nick Pope, if you've ever played FIFA, you know height is important. Nick Pope is a giant, and therefore I do think he's going to be overpowered again in FIFA 21. Alright guys, so that's going to be my cheap beast video for today. I hope you guys found it helpful. Let me know in the comment section down below. Did I miss anybody? Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you once again in the next video, but until then, later.